Modern life. Between careers, kids, and health, it can be mayhem. That's why we're here. I'm Dr. Lisa Varghese-Kroll.
And I'm Dr. Lonray Falusi. We're physicians, moms, and longtime friends who break it all down for you. Wondering how to juggle all the balls and still stay sane? Looking for advice but don't want to be overwhelmed?
Curious about how to make the most out of life for your family but enjoy it at the same time? You're in the right place. Welcome to Health and Home with the Hippocratic hosts.
By now, you've probably heard everyone from doctors to social media influencers talking about food is medicine. But what does that really mean? And what steps can you take to make healthier choices in the foods you eat? We're talking with physician and culinary medicine expert, Dr. Sabrina Falquier, about all of that and more. Hi, everyone. Lisa's out today, but we had a great time thinking through this episode's big question. When can food be medicine? Can you eat an apple today and then immediately ditch your diabetes medication? Maybe not quite, but there are some surprising ways that the foods we eat can impact chronic conditions. To help us understand the science and art of all of this, we have with us today Dr. Sabrina Falquier. She is a physician, board certified in internal medicine, culinary medicine, and lifestyle medicine. Dr. Falquier worked as a primary care doctor for a prestigious multi-specialty group in San Diego, California for over 15 years. In 2020, she founded Sensations Salud, which focuses on awakening the senses around ingredient acquisition and food preparation while empowering people to better health through nutritional knowledge and culinary literacy within their culinary medicine education and consulting. Among other leadership roles, she's on the advisory board of the Culinary Medicine Specialist Board, focusing on permeating culinary medicine into medical schools, health systems, food service industry, and the community. Welcome, Dr. Falquier.
Thank you so much. I'm really, really excited to be here having this conversation.
Oh, it's really our honor and pleasure to have you here. So let's jump right into it. What does it mean to say that food is medicine?
Yeah, so the term, I love that the term is something that is being utilized and heard a lot more, not only in the medical settings, but in the general public. So essentially, food is medicine is this concept to really look at food and what food is consistent of. So if we are looking at an ultra processed item versus a fruit right off a tree, what that's giving our body is very different. So really knowing if we are getting something closest to the way nature intended, there's going to be a lot of nutrients that come into the body that's going to support our health. So using those types of foods to support our health or to help our health needle move in a better direction.
That's great. And is there a way that, as a physician, you think about those health effects? So can I eat an apple and maybe skip my blood pressure medicine? I mean, is it that literal when it comes to food, food as medicine? When I think about some of the social media influencers, right? There's a lot of that going on of let's not do the traditional medicine and really just use food as our medicine.
Yeah, I'm glad you're asking it because it's definitely the idea is not one or the other. It's to realize just like when we go through medical school and learn that blood pressure medicines are one way to help lower our blood pressure. Using food as medicine, using physical activity, mindfulness, reducing stress, all of those are different tools in the toolbox to help reduce blood pressure if we're going down that road. And we do live in a society that's really this kind of one-hit wonder where we want the magic pill or the magic food to take care of all our ailments. And it's not that simple, even though we wished it was.
So that those ads for that one simple trick or that one magic fruit it's not real.
I don't know if I'm bursting a bubble here by stating it's really tricky because if you think of most of the things that you see on social media or the wonder food or the wonder supplement or otherwise, there's often is an amazing nutrient in there, but we can't just have that one nutrient. Or as there's a saying that's eat as if you're taking supplements, because most people that take supplements are
Hmm.
already thinking about their health. So this idea of going through the drive-through and maybe you have your water bottle and taking your supplements as you're getting your burger and fries, that's not going to balance things out, because our body does this amazing job of actually being able to absorb nutrients much better when they are, again, in their natural form. So an apple
Hmm.
versus an apple multivitamin gummy is going to have a very different effect on the body. Food as medicine is kind of like this large umbrella that has different spokes. And under that umbrella, there are things like produce prescriptions, where essentially people can sign up to get a box of vegetables either delivered to their house or there's a pickup place. There's also medically tailored meals, where essentially someone who has certain diagnosis are able to, again, get food prescribed to them. So ready-made, essentially frozen meals that are specifically directed if somebody has diabetes, for example, or kidney disease. Those are two that are used a lot. The work that I specifically do, and where I'm going to answer your question, is the work that's called culinary medicine. So really what that is evidence-based nutritional information meeting the culinary arts. So that's helping you if you have a diagnosis, or as we're having a conversation, if you and I are in the patient room, I'm asking you, what do you enjoy eating? What are foods that have felt like love to you from childhood onward? What are favorite travels? Or if you choose to eat at a restaurant, are there certain types of foods that you gravitate towards? So I'm asking you this because I'm interested and I love hearing about what people enjoy about food, but I'm also learning, right? Are you a salty snacker or a sweet snacker? Are you somebody that likes to cook or hates cooking? Are you somebody that enjoys certain spices versus others? Am I hearing you talk about eating vegetables, fruits, whole grains, well thought out proteins? Or am I hearing that your palate tends to go more towards ultra processed food? So now that I've gathered all the information, what I would tell you, or what we would discuss as a goal, is saying, okay, are there ways that we could incorporate? Like, I live in San Diego. We often eat, not often, we eat tacos a lot. I also grew up in Mexico City. And my patients often love Mexican food too. So if I hear that they love tacos and they do know how to cook, or know that they need to cook more, have skills there, we might talk about, are there ways that you could cut up vegetables to go with those tacos and still use the same spices, the cumin, the paprika, the chili powder. So you have all that flavor profile, but you are adding more nutrient dense foods that you get in all vegetables.
I appreciate so much of what you just said, especially the fact that that conversation does need to be tailored to the individual. I'm sure there are some universal truths when it comes to nutrition, but really, when you talk about like specific recommendations, every person is different. Food should not feel like punishment. I love that question of what food feels like love to you, because we do want this to be a pleasurable experience, and not that you have to restrain yourself from your favorite food forever because it's deemed less healthy, but rather thinking about the totality of it all and how that impacts your health. I thought that's really compelling and such a good point, and that finding that person, that physician, nutritionist who will take the time to sit with you is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other part too is there is a sense I'm either eating healthy or I'm having the foods that I love. And the goal is for it to be sustainable. And I often talk about this kind of 80-20 of 80% of the time trying to eat in a way, and kind of basic is, if you think of your plate, half of it trying to do fruits and vegetables, quarter whole grains, and a quarter well thought out proteins. I'm not telling you which fruits, vegetables, which whole grains, which well thought out
Hmm.
proteins, but thinking of that visual. And I used to joke that if I had a tattoo, I'd have it on my forehead because that's so ingrained. I
Uh-huh.
say, well, then I wouldn't be able to see it when I'm at the store. But that sense of when I go shopping for groceries, when I'm thinking about busy days that I know will happen, and all of us have some predictability to what our week's going to look like, and then mayhem occurs. But to prepare our pantry and our fridge and our freezer to different situations can help to
Hmm.
feel much more successful. And then there's 20%, right? If I go to Paris, I'm going to have the croissants and not not feel like, oh, I
Mhm.
had to process flour and butter. It's like, that's
Right.
living, that's enjoyment. And the goal is for it to be sustainable long term, and to also realize it's not just about the food. And that's,
Mhm.
I do culinary medicine, but I also am board certified in lifestyle medicine, which are 6 pillars of wellness that really looks at, yes, there's food, there's movement, there's wellness, meaning connection to self. So for some people, it could be meditation, going on a walk where you notice that the trees are starting to turn if it's fall, or somebody's winter garden is starting to show us its bounty. There's also connection to others, so socializing in person, sleep patterns, and then knowing
Mm.
our tipping points. So if I'm doom scrolling for an hour and a half, and that would have been my motivation time to actually make a dinner that's nutrient dense, and now I'm ordering food yet again. So really
Mm.
touching base on those, because if we just focus on the food, or even worse, say this stamp is what is considered healthy food, and it has nothing to do with what you've ever eaten, there's no way you're going to be able to stick
Mm.
through it. I mean, we know this from studies that it's usually up to 3 months, that if that people can stick with a certain eating pattern. And after that, behaviors come back if we haven't dealt with more global framework.
That I think that's so true, and it kind of thinks makes me think back to some of the other episodes that we've done around sustaining healthy habits. That it's hard to start, but when people sort of go from 0 to 60, and I'm going to do this new thing every single day and never do the thing that I was doing before, it just does not last,
Right.
right? And I think that's one of the things I like about this idea of food as medicine or culinary medicine, that it food is something that you are hopefully enjoying every day, so that the changes can be these small changes. 1/4 of my plate of one meal a day is what I'm going to focus on for this week,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then next week, maybe another quarter of my plate. As people start thinking about those specific changes, do you have sources that you like to point people to? I see you sort of mentioning like the My Plate, maybe, or maybe there's even more updated resource that you refer patients to. What are your recommendations for like online sources or other
Yeah.
resources?
So the visual, this is not to become a political or government discussion, but so essentially my plate uh, is what's used. Essentially, it's our government, U.S. government plate. The tricky part is that there's a scientific recommendations, and then there's political entities. So the meat industry, dairy
Mm.
industry. So there's a little bit of skewing that has taken place. So the visual, very similar visual that I actually, when I was still doing direct patient care, was actually the Harvard Healthy Eating Plate, because that's the science
Mm.
without the lobbying bodies. And so that I would use a lot. I literally, that's available free online, and it's available in multiple languages. So I would have that in the office, not to kind of flap it and give it to them as they're walking out the door, but
Mhm.
for us to have the visual, and then together decide what the goal would be. And like exactly like you said, a small goal of saying, you know what, I do like broccoli, and I could think of ways that I could use broccoli twice this week. I mean, tiny
Mm.
goals, which is tricky, right? You want it to change immediately, both the patient
Right.
and the physician or the health provider, but it has to be slow. And one of the parts where I worked for 15 years, us physicians had our desks next to each other, and we would be dictating our notes,
Mhm.
and we would also get messages from patients, and I would often have them send me a picture of their plate. And it was a
Mm.
great way, like, so if we set a goal, it's like, all right, send me, over the weekend, send me a picture, and I'll see it on Monday morning of, your goal. And then I could easily say, fantastic on the broccoli. How about double up the amount of broccoli? Or how about trying to roast it, or
Mhm.
other ways? You mentioned you love these spices. How about mixing those in a stir fry with this vegetable? And so those little inching, it's kind of like having a good buddy that is able to kind of urge you along.
Mhm.
And the whole time I'm thinking, so again, if you told me what you like, and you're spicy and sweet, I'm also keeping your medical diagnoses in mind. And I'm
Right.
not pointing fingers at you specifically, but who I'm working with, of really knowing, okay, this person has diabetes, this person has high blood pressure, this person has this specific goal. What are ways that we can inch it realistically and SMART goals come into place with that, of really, really measurable small goals to move forward.
How do you kind of bring that into the work that you do, right? Because there are, across different cultures, different types of foods that people eat. And because, they're healthier, with that stamp that I know is really not a black or white term, but
Yeah.
foods that are more nourishing to the body. And how do those conversations come about as you're going around and teaching and talking to groups of people?
Yeah. So a lot of it is asking rather than assuming, for sure. It's not that I go in there as quote unquote the doctor, like a pyramid, and give this information. I always make sure to open up this conversation. Again, yes, I will have a menu when I'm coming in somewhere, but talking about, okay, this is one set of spices that one could use. These are other alternatives. Like I did one project. Should probably preface now that I'm no longer in patient care, and I do all education and consulting in this space of culinary medicine. So I work with really diverse groups, and I love that. One of the groups I worked with is United Women of East Africa, who are immigrants from East Africa. And it was a tween group. And essentially it was age group where a lot of these young ladies are starting to cook for themselves in the house. And we ended up, a few days before I went, we went to an East African restaurant that has a shop in front and bought spices. And really, I love Ethiopian food as it is, but really to have it. And then we ended up making the most simple things like avocado toast and crudité, so vegetables. Yet I had brought the spices that are cooked, and we talked about it, and you could see this their eyes light up of seeing something that they're related to. And then there's also the cool factor of things like avocado toast, right?
Right.
So making this kind of trendy dish. And so that's how it is. It's really community engagement, and that's part of it too. Is a lot of this and most of the outcomes are best if it's hands-on cooking. So I'm not doing a demo or giving a lecture. I am, yes, introducing them how to hold a knife properly, the skills, but then everyone's getting in there and having ownership of how the carrot is cut, or jicama, or whatever we are creating. There's this onus of people making their own food that we're all going to eat in community during the course as well.
And as a pediatrician, it warms my heart to hear about, you're talking to these tweens. I think that it sort of getting them into that mindset early, that's impacting a lifetime potentially for them, right? And thinking about, where food comes from and how you can get your hands into it and really make what you want, and how that nourishes your body in a different way. That's really fantastic.
And what I have to say too, I love working with teenagers and teen culinary literacy, of the sense of graduating from high school and whatever's next. Are you preparing to not live at home anymore, or you're going to study, or you're starting a job, or to be able to cook for yourself, know what that food or food-like substance, the effects it's going to have on your body, just like you would knowing how to do laundry and having a budget, and really this life skill. But also the conversations are so, you have to be careful in any age group, but I specifically am thinking about teenagers, where there's a potential of eating disorders or disordered eating, and to find the why, right? So why is somebody going to care to eat, again, that apple compared to an ultra processed item like a bag of chips or otherwise, and not vilify it, right? Because people's circumstances of having an ultra processed food, that may be what is considered love in that household, right? Someone's working 4 jobs and coming home with that bag is love. Like, my parent thought about me and brought this back. My goal is not to take that away. It's to, okay, how can we add these pieces? And for somebody, it could be if they're an athlete and they want to perform really well, or it could be they want to do really well in school, but really to move it away from, notice I've never mentioned calories during this conversation, not calorie counting, not, to be a certain weight, but really focusing on optimizing your health in the short and long term.
And I think that brings us full circle back to the concept of food as medicine, right? And in the fact that what we're aiming for is a generally the totality of it all being something that nourishes you, and not to be ultra focused on the body image, the body type, the numbers on the scale, and that sort of thing. But really, kind of, what does this mean for the strength of your heart and your endurance, and how it helps you to sleep, and go about your day in a way that feels good to you. So
the idea also that it could be at any stage of life that
right.
you can improve. Even people who have COPD or chronic lung disease, by making some changes, one can have less sputum production, less outbreaks, like COPD exacerbations. And I love that it includes the entire spectrum of how many candles we have on our cake.
Right. And can you say more about that? Actually, I love that point around, like, specifically COPD. I don't know that people would often think about how my food impacts my lung health, right? We think about our heart and our liver, or pancreas, maybe, even if we're going to get really technical about it. Are there other things that you talk to people about, and have them kind of have that light bulb go off of, like, oh, the food that I eat can actually impact these diagnoses that I have?
Yeah, the way I visualize it is almost like a target where there's kind of the most obvious ones that you just mentioned. And then from there, it seems more distant, yet again, when you hear it. So for example, asthma exacerbations, emphysema, or COPD, the amount of sputum that our body makes can really be drastically changed if one eats more nutrient dense foods. I hate the word clean, so I almost said it. Now I said it, but the sense of, again, that plate and what we talked about. So that can actually make a difference. And using another example, so if somebody has arthritis, for example, and you hear the buzzword anti-inflammatory foods, and all these, the fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and well thought out proteins, those are anti-inflammatory by their very nature, which is beautiful. So especially if we're talking about protein, if it's plant-based proteins, so things like beans, hummus, those kind of pieces. So by tipping the scale of moving away from foods that are ultra processed that do cause inflammation on the body, and the changes can be pretty quick. So if I start eating, again, more from that plate that I described, people can start feeling their joints be less swollen within 1 or 2 weeks. So if someone has arthritis or joint pain, and again, this is not the health halo that if somebody has rheumatoid arthritis within eating a couple apples, now the symptoms are going to be gone. But there can be these shifts that you see way before you would see, again, that number on the scale going down. And even if someone's diabetic, you'll see the numbers improve as far as lipid profile or cholesterol levels or diabetic numbers, the hemoglobin A1C. Those will change often before the scale. And that's what drives me crazy on this emphasis on, makes sense. We can get on the scale every morning or as many times a day as one desires. And it's harder with blood work. But looking at those things like your joints feeling more nimble, less pain when you walk around, getting out of bed easier, having less mucus in your lungs, all of these are metrics that are saying, oh, wait a second, I'm moving things in the right direction, which of course can be motivational as well to say, okay, the effort of turning on my oven, roasting that broccoli, washing the dishes afterwards had its merit. So I will do this behavior again.
Well, Dr. Falquier, Sabrina, this has been such an amazing conversation, really enlightening, and I love that it's so celebratory of food, and food as something that nourishes our bodies and helps us to get through our day in a way that feels good. So really appreciate that perspective that you've brought into this with your expertise in culinary medicine and food as medicine.
Thank you so much, Lanre, for having me on your show. And I must say that as a concluding statement, I would say here that part of my decision to transition fully into culinary medicine was exactly what you just touched on, that sense of celebration. And as I transitioned into culinary medicine, I felt like my whole self could be alive because it's still so much learning and growth, yet it's in a sense of celebration and abundance rather than kind of the opposite of what one's done wrong or this box of what I'm quote unquote allowed to eat, but to really open it up into a beautiful, positive environment.
Thank you so much. So that's our show for today. Thank you as always for listening and for all your support. How have you incorporated food as medicine into your life? We'd love to hear from you. Hit us up on social media. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and other major social media platforms. And subscribe and review us on Apple Podcasts because reviewing helps other people like you find the show. And if you'd like to support us with a monthly donation, just go to our website at hippocratichosts.com and click on the Become a Friend of the Show button. We'll be forever grateful. Thanks, everyone, and talk to you soon. Thanks for listening to Health at Home with the Hippocratic Hosts. Remember that all views expressed here are our own, not our employers, and all content is for informational purposes only and should not be construed as medical advice, nor the establishment of a doctor-patient relationship. Always consult your own physician or healthcare team for any medical issues.
If you enjoyed this episode, please rate us, subscribe, and tell a friend. And check out our website at www.hippocratichosts.com for show notes on this and all our episodes. Can't wait to chat with you next time.